Hello there. This is Dale Matthews with Inside News, and I'm joined by Mike Jones. Hello, Mike.
Hey Dale, how's it going, man?
Nice to have you back, sir. So, a number of things have happened that do not relate necessarily to the budget, which is a good thing. And I thought we'd start off with a little thing that Mike is going to read us from the. You want to start with the reading from the Daily Courier or with the picture?
It doesn't really matter. I'll read this from the Courier. This is a little self-serving because I'm mentioned in it.
Yeah.
It was a letter that to the, not letters, what do they call it? It's like in the opinion section.
Letter to the editor.
Anyway, commissioners should be held. Commissioners should be held accountable. I have watched the budget committee meeting on the Bad County website. Margaret Goodwin made a motion for the county to set aside $1.5 million from the Public Works Reserve Fund to support the sheriff's office in the coming year. Of course, this upset the commissioners and the rest of the committees of the committee members, and they shut Ms. Goodwin down. Cheryl Walker even went as far as to state that money might be needed in case of a road emergency. There might be a flood or some type of landslide that blocks rural areas. Really? So there is not a law enforcement emergency? I guess not. As I was watching badcounty.com, Mike Jones made an interesting comment, which was the county government is purposefully keeping the sheriff's office underfunded just so rural areas will approve a levy, or they can bring the governor in. Either way, they are just after more money. I believe that any criminal injury or deaths should be placed directly on the heads of the county commissioners and special interest groups such as SOS because of the game they are playing with people's lives. And that was Bob Klum, or Klum, K-L-U-M, of Wolf Creek.
Now that was
okay.
From Wednesday, and that shows one side of the political spectrum. Happens to be a side that I'm on. I'm an admirer of Mike Jones as well. There have been a number of letters to the editor extolling the virtues of brand new people who are going to bring their experience to the county commissioners meetings. I don't exactly know how, because some of them have only been at maybe 9 meetings, but okay, they're going to bring their experience. Here's from the complete other side of the spectrum. This one's called, sorry, I have to look over to the side, everybody. Here's a candidate who can really help us out. On the ballot, another ballot lands on the coffee table. Is this election important? Yes. On July 1st, 2017, without more revenue, our jail will close and sheriff's deputies will be laid off. We need strong, proven, competent leadership on the Josephine County Board of Commissioners. But are there any good candidates this time? Yes. I have served alongside Dan DeYoung you know who wrote this, for the past 6 years on the Grants Pass City Council. Dan listens carefully. I'm sorry. Does his homework, and leads people in a positive direction to a logical conclusion. I haven't read this before. Dan believes in smaller and more responsible government. But does not give hope to unrealistic scenarios and federal bailouts. Dan will pursue possibilities.
And
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was interjecting.
I just have to stop every once in a while. I'm trying to deliver this straight. Dan will pursue possibilities that put people back to work in our forests and mines. We need permission to go to work, not government handouts. We need permission to go to work, not government handouts. That's what he says. I trust Dan to help lead us out of the tough times we are in to a brighter future for Josephine County so we can all return to a life of opportunity and stability. I'm going to vote for Dan DeYoung and think you should too. Signed, Darren Fowler, Grants Pass Mayor.
Here, let me boil that down to his essence. Vote for Dan. He likes levies. That's what that says. You know, because he's not in for any of this unrealistic stuff.
He listens carefully. Listens carefully. I had all these people came up and spoke to us. I didn't hear anybody that was in favor of law enforcement. The mayor is talking about listening carefully. I listened to all these people, and they had nothing really to say.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You might as well just go ahead and say that. Might just go right ahead and say it, because what else did we expect? Well,
in essence, it's listening to Dan is like listening to the right people, not the wrong people.
Yeah, we're the
wrong. Is it clear
people.
To you who the right and the wrong people are? We're the wrong people, of course we are.
We're the wrong people. We're the gnats in the room, as Simon here says. For help from the people to cut off their access to us. I'm looking for help to cut off their access to us? That's what he said. Carl Wilson agreed with him. They were laughing about it. I'm looking for help to cut off their access to us, says the public servant county representative.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, okay. Now, Mike
pretty
received
bizarre.
something in the mail that indicates the ratcheting up of the amount of money that's being spent on this. This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
What's the size of this thing?
Yeah, it really is. I guess it's entirely possible that every one of the people watching this broadcast has a copy of this in their mailbox. I don't know. I got one of these. I don't know if they're targeting, certain areas. I got one of these in the mail. Now, this is just to illustrate the size of this thing. This is full 8.5 by 11 card stock, full color. Printed both sides. Here's the front of it. This is, listen, it's a very nice picture. This is, the imagery there is good. The red, white, and the blue and all that. It's all great. Here's the other side of it. And it's, lays out his prosperity, safety, and freedom planks of his campaign. But I'm telling you, this, I was talking about the thing that Lily Morgan sent out was probably a quarter. If that was a quarter, this is 50 to 75 cents, maybe even $1. I mean, that's a lot. I don't know if they're targeting these to certain areas. I really don't know. And maybe some printers are picking in on this here. I have no idea, but I know that this stuff to you and me costs money. Heck, we make, color copies, and it's expensive enough. But this is
Hard
primo material here.
Mail.
So
That's a big deal. Sorry, I keep having to look over to the side. I'm having some monitor problems, but that's an amazing amount of money. And I'm going to speculate.
I would think
Things in the past that this is probably being bankrolled to a large extent by Andreas Bleck, the guy that's involved with the gravel mine out in Sunny Valley, the one where Keith Hick jumped in and said, he's right. And then later had to kind of back off of that a little bit. I think he'd like to be involved in the decision, but he shouldn't be, because it's not called perjuring yourself. It's called he's speaking in favor of somebody where he's supposed to be a judge about it.
Yeah, it's a conflict.
It's definitely a conflict. Okay, so I thought I would start There were a lot of audio problems in yesterday's weekly business session. There's the IT department again. They can't get the danged audio right. And so everybody sounded scratchy. I thought maybe it was just in the room. No, it's the whole thing. So the first thing that needs to be done by fiscal conservatives is get somebody in there that can do the job right. We don't need a whole staff full of people who can never get it right. And I know what I'm talking about, and Mike does too. So,
listen, it's not like this is an expensive thing to do, relatively speaking. They could have HD cameras, and they could be putting this out in a 16 by 9 HD format. And it wouldn't hardly cost them anything. And they have all the equipment, and I believe they even have the cameras to do this. And
yes,
this is just not a priority for these people to do this. It's probably a pain in the rear end. They have discussions amongst themselves as to who has to go down and run the stupid show at the weekly business session. They're
doing it remotely now. They're doing it from their offices, so they don't even have to get up out of their dang chair.
Yeah, well, that explains some of the lag in camera switching, because there is obviously, maybe as much as a few seconds delay between when they're.
This is Simon Hare can go on for a whole soliloquy, and they never go to him because they're not paying any attention. They're sitting in their office, eating their crullers or whatever, talking to each other, and nobody's paying attention to what's actually happening because it's not a priority, because it's aimed at the public. Okay, and it's, to me now, it's indicative of, might as well go the whole way. As there's a small, it looks small from the audience, but it's probably a 4 foot wide, so that's not so small, high definition monitor that's up above the commissioners. And it's always dark. Well, they bought this with the public education government funds. They're supposed to make it possible for us to have our own programs. Not Mike and I, we've got this, but you guys, your Rose Club or the little kids singing or something like that. And so they put this thing up there and go, what's that for? Well, the entire thing, high definition monitor, was so they could put a clock on there so that people would know when their time was up.
Yeah.
And it's never worked. And it's just sitting there as a stunning reminder of the incompetence. Sorry, this is one of my pet peeves. Seeing this thing mounted to the wall by the IT department, and it was from something so stupid. Boy, I'm not in a good mood today. Something so stupid as telling you how much time you have, and it's never worked. It's a countdown clock. What's the difficulty? And it needed to be in high definition?
Yeah. This is another one of those things where they could fix this in a second. It's a will to do so.
Well, it was stupid to have the thing there in the first place. It's a bad idea from the get-go. Okay. So, how to say this? Well, Mike and I have agreed that what we do is we just basically show people at the candidates forums, and we put them all up like this over my shoulder, and then you could see for yourself and come to your own conclusions. There were a couple of people who said, well, listen, there's one of the candidates that I think we need to be very, very careful about because he's avoiding a number of questions and gets real, real testy. And there's two candidates that fall into that category, and I know who I mean already. And so
I do. Huh?
Yeah, well, you do, yeah. And one of the other candidates said, well, I'm going to come out and I'm going to say things. I'm going to set the record straight. I'm going to warn people about what the things they need to know. And she has never done so. Okay. So I thought, well, it's kind of late in the game now. We're just a couple of weeks out. I'm going to get up and I'm going to say something without going overboard. So here I am, a little bit scratchy. It's not me. It's the county's audio. IT strikes again. And here's what I had to say. And it's a little sharper than the positive things that I've been saying about change. Here we go. Dale.
Dale Matthews, Grants Pass. When Ford first started selling vehicles to communist China, they had to get the permission from the State Department, who warned them that they might turn them into military vehicles. They did, and the Chinese then abrogated their contract and stole all the technology. When Hummer, which is the civilian version of the Humvee, got permission from the State Department to sell some business secrets to the Chinese, they abrogated their contract, they stole the technology, and they're making military vehicles. The State Department now says, especially the intelligence community says, that Communist Chinese and their army are the biggest threat to America that there is. They're in a constant daily battle to grab up all the information they can from our companies and to burrow in and to try to turn off technology like power technology and etc. They are a real and present danger to this country. So what relationship does that have to us here locally? Well, when we're looking at our strategic reserves in this county, and we're looking at the lumber that we sell to China, and we're looking at our location on the highway, there are a number of things to bring us to the attention of any government in the world. We have current leadership who was forced into the military and then came out saying that the Pledge of Allegiance is repetitive. We've got me. I'm an active service captain. I do search and rescue. And on my flight suit is a flag that has a gold border around it. And active duty people know what that means. Now we've got someone that would like to be a community leader here that sells American military technology to the Communist Chinese army. The State Department has approved that, or did. And this is a person who feels that America's military technology for profit should end up in the pocket of the Communist Chinese army. I don't approve. I don't think that kind of person should be made into a leader in this community. I'm not very pleased with the leaders that we have now. But we do have a choice in front of us, and we're going to decide where we want to go. And so, if you want to follow this lead right here, go ahead.
Anybody else on this side? Yes.
Mike?
Anybody else on this side?
Yeah.
Yeah, who were you talking about coming out of the military? You didn't mention his, at one point after coming out of the Marine Corps, which is the most patriotic gung ho. He was a socialist at one point there for.
He joined the Socialist Workers Party right after coming out of the Marine Corps. That's right. That's right. And now he says that these. These are pretty sore spots for Keith Hick. It's true. I mean, he's admitted it. And he has said this, and we got him on tape saying that, and he was on KJO, lamenting that we're saying the Pledge of Allegiance is kind of repetitive. It's kind of repetitive? I mean, this isn't Portlandia, buddy. This is Josephine County.
That's funny what you just said. It's kind of repetitive. Wow. It's kind of repetitive?
And did you see what I held up at the end? A number of people looked at it and they go, what the heck was that?
Yeah, what was that?
It was a rice box. That's as close as God.
Oh, jeez. So,
yes?
I thought that... I thought that, if you were within a certain number of days or after the ballots go out, you're not supposed to do that.
I didn't, did I? No, boy, I talked about you and I. I'm not pulling you into this, but boy, I was ice skating on that one. And I did not mention what organization I'm a member of, where I've got that on my flight suit. I did not mention the name of that organization. I did not mention the name of the organization. I didn't even say it was auxiliary anything. I did not mention it. Here's Keith Heck's response, his studious response. Here we go. Keith? What, Frozen in Fear, Keith? Okay, here we go.
Okay, just a couple of responding to Mr. Matthews, which I very rarely do, but your comments about I'm assuming that I was forced into this Marine Corps is right. My probation officer worked a deal, and I went in for 4 years. And also to note that in 4 years' time, I received an honorable discharge from the United States Marine Corps. To equate the Civil Air Patrol with the United States Marine Corps is, well, I'll just let that one go. I've also been notified by the commander of the Civil Air Patrol that if you ever used out of your mouth the word Civil Air Patrol, that you were in somehow, you are listed as a 4-0, which means you cannot be, they don't want you. And so I will notify them again, and they will do whatever they're going to do. But to think that you will somehow commend yourself for being a member of the Civil Air Patrol, like that's somehow commendable, you're not. They don't want you, and they have listed you. They have listed you that way. Pardon me, Mr. Matthews.
No, you're not.
Do you want to leave? Do you want to keep intruding on my time when I did not intrude on yours? So, okay, I'm taking that you're going to keep quiet. But I will notify them, and we'll let them resolve the issue between the local and the state issue. But such it is.
So, now Mike knows, I'm dragging you into this, Mike, sorry, but I went around a couple of weeks. You want to tell him? Go ahead, bud. Go ahead.
I'm not. I missed a piece of what you're saying there because of net issues. Say it again.
I went around a couple of weeks ago to, I think, almost every candidate I could get my hands on. And I showed them my ID badge. And it says on there very clearly, I am a member of the organization that I'm not mentioning here, and I did not mention it at the weekly business session. Because they don't like you mixing that with politics.
Right, and
go ahead.
I see. So I don't understand what he was making reference to a rating
and that's the biggest BS of all. There's no 4.0 rating. There isn't any 4.0 rating. By the way, just in case I've somehow missed out, I called national headquarters for this group. And this is a national headquarters where, as I said carefully in what I was saying there as far as serving your country, that I have a flight suit that has a American flag on the side with a gold border around it, and current active duty people who are serving their country, they're the only ones that are supposed to wear that with the gold braid around it, a white braid otherwise. Okay, that's fine. So, and I took that ID card around and I showed it to all the candidates because I had gotten kind of a heads up that maybe somebody was going to question that sometime soon. And so I showed it to everybody. So they know for sure that I am a member of an organization that I'm trying not to drag into this. But Keith Heck decided to say, 1, I'm not a member. I'm no longer a member. 2, they don't want me. 3, I'm rated 4.0, which there is no such thing. And he's going to alert the commander to try to get me in trouble. This is the intellectual pinnacle at this moment of Keith Heck, County Commissioner. And what I was saying from the audience is, I wasn't just going to sit there. I said, that's not true. That's a lie. That's not true. Well, you've had your chance. I'm going to speak. He waits till it's protected time for commissioners, And then, I mean, this is the equivalent of what Cheryl Walker said when she said, well, you've just heard Dale Matthews say that all firefighters are pedophiles. What? They now feel they can just say anything, and it does not matter. But I'm very happy that I've already gone ahead and shown that ID card to all the other candidates without making a huge deal about it. But here's the big point. We expect Keith Heck to be a liar and cheater to the last. Liars lie, cheaters cheat. That's what he's going to do till his last dying day on the county commission. But here's a question for you, Mike. There were other candidates in the room. There were other candidates in the room that know the truth. There were other candidates in the room that acknowledged that they had seen this thing. They did not get up to speak. What kind of county commissioner, once they know what the truth is, and I'm not identifying who they are, what kind of county commissioner would that person make if they know something is completely false and would sit there and say nothing?
Now, I don't know, and I to be honest, I don't know if that's a fair characterization because you showed it to, I mean, you went out of your way to show it to most of the other people that were at this candidates event there just so that they could see what it was and everything. But having seen that card, I don't know, you know, I didn't call them up and do an investigation of you or whatever. So if Keith Heck is up there saying something, these people that are sitting out there don't have any way of knowing whether or not Keith has got the current information and you've got an old card that's no longer valid or something like that. That's,
well, they could see they could see the date on the card.
Okay.
If there's a question, okay, if there's going to be a question about this, somebody could get up and say, now wait a second, or anybody rushes to judgment here, Dale made a point of showing me his ID badge. He made a point of showing it to me and asking me if I could see what it is. Yes, I can. Now, I don't know what all the details are, but it seems like you might be rushing to say something here, Mr. Heck. And you maybe shouldn't do that until you've seen that ID badge or somebody has checked into this. And they didn't do so. And
right. I agree. He's probably, you know, operating out of order. But I got to tell you, if you're a candidate at one of these events, and I've had a number of conversations with candidates at these events, and they're simultaneously in two places at one time. They're standing in front of you, and they're swimming in their head as to what's going to be happening in that evening. And so I don't know how much, you know, attention they may have paid to, you know, you showing them that card.
Well, what do you think I would do? Okay. What would you do in this situation? If you you might at least say, no, wait a minute. We don't know this to be true. I mean, I've seen the opposite, and I don't know.
Right.
But you would speak up, especially when it's somebody that's speaking during their protected time, and it is slanderous, but it doesn't meet the last thing of causing economic damage. Well, it could potentially do that if the whole election hinged on this, but the whole election isn't going to hinge on what Keith Heck says to anybody about anything.
Yeah, but the other thing that seems to give people an out to say whatever they want to say is that it has something to do with politics too, because you can say almost anything about anybody, as we have seen here. I mean, for crying out loud, Ted Cruz's father was associated with the assassination of JFK. No repercussion whatsoever, and you know, I mean, what are you going to do? Everybody knew that it was completely false.
I was there. One of the candidates is real popular at a certain kind of club meeting. And I was there at that club meeting, and I believe so was that candidate, when somebody said, you know, about that Zapruder film, I don't understand why there's any question about what happened. And everybody's like, well, okay, what do you mean? Well, you can clearly see on the film that the guy sitting next to the president pulls out a revolver. It's on the film, and puts it at his head and pulls the trigger. So why is there any doubt about who killed the president?
I got to tell you, you know what? I remember back in the 70s, that we had a number of rental units, and occasionally a tenant would stop in, and we'd have a conversation while they were paying their rent or whatever. And the knockdown, drag out arguments that we used to get, you got 5 people standing in a circle, and we're like almost to blows, talking about the JFK assassination and the autopsy and the Warren Commission and the whole 9 yards. It was just insanity. And so and that when Dale told me that, I wasn't there for that one, but when Dale told me that one, I said that is the topper. I've never heard one that was quite as bizarre as
it's
that
on film.
one where yes, I'm going to have to go watch that film again. It's probably on YouTube.
The question about and the amazing thing. Now, I was a guest, so I was fairly tempted to say, "Oh," I kept quiet, but I looked around the room, and there were nods of assent, and there were other people. Oh yeah, that's right, that's on the film. And there were other people who looked like kind of doubtful. Well, if you're a member of a club and someone says something. To me now, there's just some kind of moral responsibility to say, I'm not entirely sure that's correct, Mr. Heck, or I'm not entirely sure that's correct, Mr. Candidate, or whoever else is there, and at least raise a question about it. That's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the kind of person that a lot of people want to elect. And it's not the kind of person that's been running the county, because you can see a lot of this in Simon Hare, who sits there and he listens to the most outrageous things and he says nothing. And I talked several times to Simon, and I said, that's my biggest complaint about you. I'm expecting that everybody's going to make a lunkhead decision now and again, and you've had your share. I said, but the main thing is you're sitting right there when these really outrageous things happen. And most of the time, he did call him a kangaroo court once, most of the time, you say nothing. How can you sit there and say nothing when it's that outrageous?
Yeah, I think that would be the toughest part about.
Well, the toughest part would be keeping quiet for me. I mean, when she says, he's just told you that all firefighters are pedophiles, how can you sit there? How can anybody sit there? Nobody from the audience spoke up.
Yeah. Right, and it's what that because I was there for that one, and it was like somebody should correct the record. No, clearly he was not intimating that all firefighters are pedophiles. I forget the context of what the mentioning of it had something to do with the screening of firefighters or whatever, and from what you said, she grabbed that out of it because it was like and she did this the other day. Suggesting that we were saying bad things about the people of Cave Junction,
that's right.
Having something to do with the crime, and that she was coming to the rescue of the people of Cave Junction. I honor those people. Those people are the salt of the earth, and I won't sit here and have you insult them. And of course, that wasn't what was going on, but she was trying to make hay while the sun was shining. So.
Well, the lights are almost out, Cheryl. They are for you, bud. You're not going to be the commissioner next time. Okay, so lots of people have said, what in the world are we going to do? Depending on how the election turns out and when the world gets in, what are we going to do about Simon Hare? What are we going to do with this guy? Now, I've taken a stand that I think that he should have some liaison positions, etc., but they should only be the kind that he can walk to inside the courthouse. I don't like the idea of anybody or himself driving around this county where, even if he's not driving himself, which he probably is, I don't know for sure, I don't follow the guy, follow the money, that's what we try to do. But if somebody is driving him to each and every county appointment, what if that person gets involved in an accident? The county may be liable because he's on county business, and this person, he arranged to have them. It's certainly going to be attempted to sue the county because we're supposedly the ones with the deep pockets. And so I don't like the idea of this guy driving. I don't like the idea of anybody driving them around. Unless, I don't know, maybe it's a cab company and they assume responsibility, but some individual person, and Wally Hicks isn't going to say anything. I mean, he drank the Kool-Aid. He is the Kool-Aid. So there's no way that he's going to try to protect the county's best interest by saying, that's not a good policy, you guys. Remember, they were going to get him a car and a driver. Well, I can take care of this myself. It's not up to him to take care of it himself for county business. So I've suggested that we cut off the couple of those organizations, and that we say to him, you're now liaison just to these, and if they can't meet in the courthouse, then you're not going to be meeting with them. That's a little tough, but I mean, drunk driving. We're lucky nobody is dead. And he ran into a policeman, or almost ran into a policeman. So, and that was strike number 4, not strike number 3. So I'm watching today in the little back room in awe as Simon Hare, I mean, you got to be fair. Simon Hare started talking just off the hip about parks and the rules and the things that were brought to them by legal counsel today. And it was awesome. So before we throw out the little prince with the bathwater, it's important, I think, to keep in mind that this guy does have an encyclopedic knowledge. He's on the wrong side. His heart's not in the right place. He thinks that feedback from public is just gnats in the room that he'd like to be cut off from. But this guy knows his stuff. And I think the important thing to watch, I just like to let it roll. Important, and just sit back and go, wow. Important thing is they had yesterday, they had an executive session where they were talking about this subject, and you'll see what it is in a minute. And when Wally Hicks brings it to him in the public session, in front of our camera, in front of you and me, he wasn't explaining anything about what this was about. See, because the commissioners already know, and that's the only thing that counts. And Simon says, well, I think it's important to explain to the public. Yes, thank you very much, Simon Hare, quite right. And he then, you got to watch Keith. Watch Keith. As Simon starts talking about this, in fact, everybody in the room, watch Keith, especially as Simon starts talking about what this topic is and why it's important. I got to look over to the side to play this, but this is about 8 minutes. It'll be worth watching it, and then you need to answer, what the heck are we going to do with this guy? Go ahead. Here we go.
And so what we're presenting to you today is some documentation, pardon me, about the real property auction that is intended to be held on June 10, 2016. And June 10, 16th. June 16th. Yeah, okay. So this is going to need to be adjusted. Thank you. June 16, 2016.
It wasn't going anywhere, actually.
This is right. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to field them. We can review the documentation of.
I mean, everything is tied together, and there's not going to be any big hiccups between now and June 17th or whatever it is. 16th.
I don't anticipate any.
We can start from the beginning. The reason for admin meetings are to kind of spell out the process. We discussed this yesterday in executive session. It's really important that the public understands what we're trying to do here. Something we haven't done for a long time, which is take foreclosed property. And usually we have to go through a process of designating them either for parks or forestry, as the state law allows. Otherwise, foreclosed properties that go to auction, the funds or the revenue is distributed to the other taxing districts that normally would have received the tax benefit of those pieces of property being a private tax roll. And as Josephine County's tax rate is the 10th lowest out of the 13 in the county that we have, we have a tendency to not do that, and we usually take advantage of the state statute to designate forestry or park. In this case, all of the properties that we're looking to sell, some around 15 properties, no more than that, are all previously designated as park properties. And that doesn't mean we're going to build a park. It means that the revenue from the proceeds from these sales has to go to the Parks Department for basically capital type investments in the operations of the park. And so this is the park is a worthy cause. Certainly could use some assistance in this way. I don't know when was the last time we had a sale like this, but it was quite a long time ago. So this is one step in a series of many in order to get it to this place. I want to commend legal counsel and specifically Pat and Mike Watson and a whole team of people who have worked together to make this happen so far. It's not an easy process. And these properties actually have already previously been designated and have gone to sale and were not purchased for whatever reason. And so the board is making a determination today of a minimum bid price, setting the real market value, and all agreeing to the real market value, not setting it, but as recommended by our assessor's office. But Mike was unable to be here because he's attending the conference. Connie is not available. And we've got Ms. Archie, who's been integral in this process as well. A whole host of players, Brad, our public health department, and others. So there'll be an administrative element when these properties are sold after they've gone to auction. If a minimum bid isn't reached, the county can enter into an agreement with anybody who comes forward and makes an offer if we agree to it. Actually can do that now, and a number of the neighboring property owners are going to be notified following maybe even today or next week.
Well, next week. Yeah. Formal board action will come next week, so that's when things get kicked off.
Yeah, so that's when it starts the process. But I think I've covered almost.
I think that covers. That was very eloquent.
Okay, so
Yeah.
It's not complicated. The next round, our hope is to have 2 of these kinds of sales in more of a routine.
Look at poor old Keith.
So for one in September-ish and one in June. One of the reasons it needs to be done by that date proposed is June 16th is if we are interested in having these on the tax rolls, we have to meet that deadline of end of June for it to be included in the exchange of the roll by the assessor and the treasurer and tax collector. So I think that's the timeliness of this. We have to publish in a local newspaper 4 consecutive weeks leading up to the.
Oh, something happened there. Oh, it's resetting itself. Sorry about
the
that.
Sale, all of the stuff. There's going to be a website developed and published that explains all the process. There's at the sale, if we determine on Wednesday that it's 20, we're recommending 20% to be basically the down payment. The sales on the 16th, the full payment amount would be due at 3 p.m. To the county on June 20th, on Monday. It looks like a lighter color up there. That's not a holiday, right?
No, that's the summer begins.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Kind of a holiday, but
It's the day after Father's Day.
we will, the offices will be open. I think we chose 3 o'clock so that we're not bumping up against any kind of a deadline. The checks are cash or money order is brought to the treasurer's office for collection. If in the event that the total bid price is not arrived at, the purchaser forfeits that 20% down. Those are the rules. So it's really big incentive to make sure you kind of can afford what you're bidding on when you bid. That's pretty key. Like any auction, that's not good to bid on something if you can't afford it. So
That's awesome. Sorry, maybe there are people who don't like. Maybe there are people who don't like this guy, but I got to tell you, that's awesome.
Hey, Dale, I think you need to re-hit the external button because all I see is a frozen image of the backroom meeting there.
Okay, just a second, buddy. Sorry about that. Yeah, it looks that way. Wait, okay, the second. That's awesome.
There we
I mean,
go.
say whatever you want about this guy, and it's probably true. But when you see Keith compared with Simon, and Simon compared with both legal counsel people there, that was incredible. This guy is an encyclopedia sometimes. It's just too bad that he's the kind of guy that he is, and he has regard for the people. But man, that was.
I assume that he read. Okay, so he read the documents having to do with the sale of things, and I'd say you know what? If people don't bring enough money to an auction, that's their problem. I don't understand the need for the discussion about that or whatever. You know, I don't know. I'm not super impressed.
Well, he's liaison to Parks. And as liaison to Parks, this kid is doing an incredible job. I mean, he knows his stuff. Now, he's also liaison to Public Works, and he doesn't want any of that Public Works money possibly going to alleviate the terrible emergency that we have with public safety, because public safety did not want him. The sheriff did not want him as their liaison. They wanted Cheryl Walker. So now compare, and I'm replaying a little part of this, compare that level of intellectual prowess with this.
My comments on the comments.
Okay, just a couple of responding to Mr. Matthews, which I very rarely do, but your comments about I'm assuming that I was forced into this Marine Corps is right. My probation officer worked a deal, and I went in for 4 years. And also to note that in 4 years' time, I received an honorable discharge from the United States Marine Corps. To equate the Civil Air Patrol with the United States Marine Corps is, well, I'll just let that one go. I've also been notified by the commander of the Civil Air Patrol that if you ever used out of your mouth the word Civil Air Patrol, that you were you are listed as a 4-0, which means you cannot be, they don't want you.
So that's the difference of the intellectual level, in my opinion, of these two commissioners.
Yeah, well, that's certainly true. Listen, it's clear that Simon reads a lot.
Yes.
The other two probably don't very much at all.
So then, if you ended up being commissioner, anybody in the audience, what would you do with Simon Hare? I think you should really seriously consider having him continue as liaison to Parks. That's my, yeah. I think that Simon's a smart guy. I think he is poorly equipped for responsibility over other people's money. That's what I think about Simon Hare. And he can put on a very good show, but in terms of he's just not a good moral example. I wouldn't trust him with anything of mine. I'll tell you that right now. So, well, okay. So almost certainly we know one is out. So we're going to be saying goodbye to two commissioners, and then we'll see whether the third one is marginalized or not. And it all depends on who's chosen coming up. You may have already made your decisions. I talked with someone today that said they hadn't received their ballot yet. Really? So I told them who to talk to.
Wow.
Tricia Myers over at the clerk's office. In my opinion, she's a good person, and she'll look into it for you. Clerk's office, Josephine County Clerk, and find out what's going on if you have a question. And you can always make a trip over there, but you could call also, and then maybe find out. But this is a show about politics. Of course, we're going to tell you this information. So if you have any questions for us about what's coming up, who's going where, why people are doing things, we're going to do the best that we can to answer your questions. That's what we do. Mike, do you have anything to bring us on home here, bud?
No, not a whole lot. I'm deeply engaged in hydroponic gardening right now.
Yeah.
That's my.
It's about the right time for that. Enough that
Yes.
we got contacted by some guy saying, "Do you think that we ought to have another candidates forum?" And Mike and I are on the phone. No.
Yes, I think we've had about enough of that. Yeah, I'm ready for this whole thing to wrap up and be over with.
Absolutely.
To be honest, and I recall this being very, very similar to this last year when we were in a daily battle against the levy, and by the time the mid-May election rolled around, it was. Thank God it's over. Let's move along here.
So I provided a little bit of respite for you yesterday, and we're going to continue to do that into the future. And we haven't been looking at the city council at all, so we'll probably need to do that. And it continues to be a show about politics. So we will bring you what we think you need to know, and whether we're right or wrong about what we think you need to know, it's like 10 times more than the Courier's telling you about any of these subjects. So that's what we do. Well, thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Glad Mike's back. Bye, everybody.